Weddings are supposed to be joyful, memorable, and ideally drama-free. But mine? Let's just say things took a turn I never saw coming. What started as a simple, heartfelt promise to my 6-year-old stepdaughter turned into a full-blown family feud, all because I would make my 2-year-old niece the flower girl. My brother and sister-in-law recently had their long-awaited miracle baby after years of infertility, and ever since, she's been the center of attention at every family gathering. I love my niece, I really do, but when my SIL demanded that I honor her daughter at my wedding by taking away the role from my stepdaughter, I had to draw the line. Now I'm being accused of not loving my niece. My family's divided, and I'm left wondering, how did things spiral out of control so fast? Was I really the one in the wrong for standing my ground on something that felt so personal and fair? To understand how this all exploded, you have to know the backstory. My brother and sister-in-law had been trying for a baby for years. I mean years. They went through multiple rounds of IVF, suffered a few heartbreaking miscarriages, and were eventually told that having a child might not be possible due to my SIL's medical condition. It was an emotional roller coaster for them, and for a long time, their pain was something that deeply affected our whole family. So, when they finally got pregnant and carried a term, everyone, myself included, was beyond happy for them. We all rallied around them. The pregnancy was celebrated constantly, and when their daughter was born, it felt like a victory for the entire family. She really is their miracle baby. Naturally, that meant she became the star of the show. At first, it made sense. Her birth was a huge deal, and everyone was genuinely happy. But as time passed, things started to shift in a weird way. Every family gathering turned into a sort of shrine to her. Whether it was someone's birthday, a holiday dinner, or even another relative's baby shower, somehow, it always circled back to my niece. My SIL would bring up her pregnancy journey almost every time we were together, often in very personal detail. It was as if she needed everyone to constantly acknowledge the struggle they went through and how special their daughter is. And sure, she is special. But so are other kids in the family, and slowly, it felt like they were being pushed aside. People started to notice, too. My cousins, aunts, even my mom once whispered that it was getting a bit much. But no one said anything out loud. No one wanted to upset my SIL or be accused of being insensitive after everything she'd been through. So the rest of us just smiled politely, listened to the stories we'd already heard a dozen times, and tried not to make waves. I kept my thoughts to myself, even when it felt like other people's milestones were being overshadowed. The thing is, I don't blame them for being proud of their daughter. She's adorable and clearly loved beyond measure. But over time, it began to feel like any event that didn't center on her was somehow lacking. And now, with my wedding coming up, I should have seen it coming, that they'd want to play a major role. But I didn't expect it to get this heated. After all, it's my wedding. Shouldn't I get to make those choices without being made to feel like a villain? After everything my brother and sister-in-law went through, I genuinely believe they'd understand that other people in the family also deserve moments to shine, especially children. That's why, when my fiancé and I got engaged last year, we made it a point to include his kids from the very beginning. He has 2 children from a previous marriage, his son, who's 10, and his daughter, who's 6. And from day one, they've been nothing but sweet and supportive toward me. His daughter, especially, has been excited about the wedding in a way only a 6-year-old can be. When we told them the news, she lit up and immediately asked if she could be the flower girl. I still remember the way she squealed and hugged me when I said yes. It meant something to her. It wasn't just a cute role to play. It was her way of feeling included, of being part of something that symbolized her family growing and changing. Saying yes to her was a no-brainer. It was one of those special parenting moments where you get to make a child feel seen, valued, and loved. To be honest, I was also thinking about what it would mean in the long run. I'm not just marrying my fiancé. I'm becoming part of a family that already exists. And that means showing up for the kids in ways big and small. Letting his daughter be the flower girl felt like a meaningful way to show that I respect her place in our new life together. It wasn't something I ever considered taking away from her, not even when my sister-in-law came to me with her request. When she first asked if my niece could be the flower girl, I thought it was just a misunderstanding. I gently explained that my stepdaughter had already asked for the role and that we'd said yes months ago. I figured she'd understand, but she didn't. Instead, she immediately asked if my stepdaughter could just carry my niece down the aisle with her. I was stunned. I tried to explain that my stepdaughter is still a child herself, just 6 years old, and that expecting her to carry or manage a toddler while also walking down the aisle was a lot. Not to mention, my stepdaughter had been dreaming of this moment, sharing the spotlight with a 2-year-old, who likely wouldn't even remember it. Didn't feel fair. But my SIL wouldn't drop it. She kept pressing, suggesting that maybe she herself could carry her daughter down the aisle. She said it would be a beautiful symbol, and that it would mean so much to her to have their daughter included in a meaningful way. At that point, I realized this wasn't just about including my niece. It was about centering her. I tried to stay calm and respectful, but it was getting harder. I reminded her again that I had already made a promise to my stepdaughter, and I wasn't going to break it. That should have been the end of it. But instead, my SIL seemed offended that I wouldn't even consider changing plans to accommodate her. She acted like I was dismissing everything she'd gone through to have her child, as if not making her daughter the flower girl was somehow a personal attack on her entire motherhood journey. I didn't know what to say. I felt torn between keeping a promise I made to a little girl who sees me as family and managing the emotions of a woman who seems to expect everyone else's life to revolve around hers. What was supposed to be a joyful moment was starting to feel like a political negotiation, and no matter what I said, I could feel the resentment starting to build. By this point, I thought I had made myself clear. I wasn't trying to be difficult or dismissive. I was simply sticking to a promise I made and honoring a little girl who was genuinely excited about being part of our special day. But instead of accepting that, my sister-in-law doubled down. She circled back a few days later, this time with my brother, and they tried again to get me to reconsider. They asked me to at least think about it, which I had already done. My brother was more reserved, but I could tell from the way he avoided eye contact that he agreed with her. They said they understood that my stepdaughter had her heart set on it, but wouldn't it be so special if she walked down the aisle with my niece in her arms? They kept calling it a beautiful moment, a symbol of unity between the two families. I'll admit for a second I almost caved, not because I agreed with them, but because I was tired of the guilt tripping, the awkward silences during group chats, the subtle pressure being passed around like a hot potato at family dinners. But then I imagined my stepdaughter, standing there in her little white dress, her eyes full of excitement, only to be told at the last minute that she wouldn't get to walk alone, that she'd have to carry a toddler she barely knows down the aisle. She's a sweet, caring kid, but she's still 6. That's a lot to put on her shoulders. So again, I said no, calmly but firmly. I told them that I appreciated how much their daughter means to them, and that I understood why they want to include her. But I wasn't going to disrupt a promise I made just to satisfy a sense of symbolism that felt more like a performance than a genuine gesture. That's when things escalated. My SIL's tone shifted instantly. The pleading turned into accusations. She said I was being selfish, and that I clearly didn't care about honoring what their daughter represents. She told me I was being dismissive of their journey, and that, after everything they'd been through, the least I could do was give their daughter a special role in my wedding. I was stunned and honestly hurt. I had spent the last 2 years celebrating their pregnancy, their birth, their milestones. I was there for the baby's shower, the hospital visit, the first birthday. I bought the miracle baby onesies. I listened to every story about every doctor's appointment, every scare, every emotional moment. And I was glad to, because I love my niece. But now it felt like none of that mattered. None of it was enough unless I let their daughter be the star of my wedding too. My SIL then threw out one last idea, that she herself would carry my niece down the aisle as the flower girl. That way, my stepdaughter could still walk alone and everyone wins. But to me, that wasn't a solution. That was her trying to take center stage during a moment that had absolutely nothing to do with her. It felt so performative, like she needed another opportunity to remind everyone, in a very public and visual way, that their daughter is special. And she is, no doubt. But this wasn't the time or the place. This was my wedding. My fiancé and I had already built this day around meaningful roles for his children. We weren't going to turn it into a tribute to someone else's journey just because they expected it. I wish I could say that conversation ended on a peaceful note, but it didn't. She left in tears. My brother followed quietly behind her, and I was left standing there, wondering how something so simple had turned so complicated. After that emotional conversation, I really hoped things would settle down. I thought maybe, with some time, my sister-in-law and brother would understand where I was coming from. I wasn't trying to hurt anyone. I was just protecting something that mattered to me and to my stepdaughter. But instead of letting things go, they did the exact opposite. Over the next week, I started hearing from other family members. First, it was a cousin texting me, saying, "Hey, I heard you're not letting your niece be in your wedding? Is that true?" Then it was an aunt asking if I could find a way to compromise just for family peace. The way people were talking, you'd think I had banned my niece from attending the wedding altogether. I was confused until I realized what happened. My sister-in-law and brother were actively reaching out to other relatives, telling them I had refused to include my niece in any way because I didn't care about their journey. According to the version they were sharing, I was being cold, dismissive, and heartless. That I was playing favorites by giving my stepdaughter the flower girl role and completely ignoring my only niece. It stung. I couldn't believe they were twisting the story like that. Leaving out the part where my stepdaughter had asked for the role a year ago, or the fact that my niece would only be 2 years old at the time of the wedding and likely wouldn't remember any of it. Instead, they painted me as someone who didn't love or value my niece at all. The worst part was when my own mom started to fold under the pressure. She had originally tried to stay neutral, which I appreciated. But after hearing from my brother and sister-in-law and getting calls from extended relatives, she sat me down and gently said, "Maybe you should think about switching the roles. Your stepdaughter is still young. She'll understand." I was floored. My mom has always been fair. But now, even she was suggesting that I go back on a promise to a little girl who was genuinely excited about the wedding just to avoid upsetting someone else. I looked at her and asked, "Do you really think it's okay to let down a child who's done nothing wrong? Who's been dreaming about this for a year? Just so my SIL feels more included?" My mom didn't have an answer. She just said, "It might keep the peace." That phrase, "keep the peace," has been haunting me ever since. Because for some reason, keeping the peace always seems to mean giving in to the person making the most noise. And in this case, that person is my sister-in-law. She's not just hurt. She's actively trying to make everyone else feel hurt on her behalf. It's like she believes that because of everything she's gone through, the rest of us owe her a lifetime of center stage moments. And honestly, I feel like my wedding is just the latest place she's trying to claim one. I kept thinking about my stepdaughter, how proud she'll be when she walks down the aisle, how excited she's been about her dress, her flower basket, practicing with me. How am I supposed to look her in the eye and tell her, "Sorry, sweetie, you can't be the flower girl anymore because someone else wanted it more"? What message does that send to her? At the end of the day, I didn't choose between my niece and my stepdaughter. I chose to keep a promise. I chose to respect a commitment I made to a child who's becoming my family too. And it hurts that doing the right thing for the right reasons has made me the bad guy in someone else's story. As the wedding gets closer, the tension hasn't completely disappeared. But I've stopped letting it dictate how I move forward. I've had to remind myself, again and again, that this day isn't about pleasing everyone. It's about beginning a new chapter with the man I love and embracing the family we're creating together, including his kids, who've shown nothing but love and openness since day one. My fiancé has been incredibly supportive throughout all of this. When I told him everything his daughter had been dragged into without even realizing it, his expression said it all: protectiveness, frustration, and a quiet kind of gratitude. "Thank you for standing up for her," he said. And honestly, that moment helped me reset. I wasn't just making a decision about who walks down the aisle first. I was showing my stepdaughter that her voice matters, that promises are kept, and that no one gets to take her place just because they make a louder case. There's been a lot of noise from other family members. Sure, I've gotten side eyes at brunch, passive-aggressive comments disguised as advice, and more than one pointed remark about miracles deserving celebration. But I've also gotten quiet support, text from cousins saying, "You're doing the right thing," and even a surprising message from my dad, who usually stays out of drama entirely. He said, "Don't let anyone bully you into guilt. This is your day." And that's just it. This is our wedding, mine and my fiancé's. And the people we've chosen to include have been chosen with care, with meaning. My niece will be there, of course. She'll be in the family photos. She'll be part of the celebration, and she'll be showered with love like she always is. But she won't be the flower girl. Not because she's not loved, not because her parents' journey doesn't matter, but because that role was promised to someone else. And that someone is just as deserving of joy and recognition. My sister-in-law, unfortunately, still isn't speaking to me. She's hurt, and maybe she will be for a while. I've come to terms with that. I understand that what she went through to have her child was deeply emotional, and she sees her daughter as a symbol of hope and resilience. But that doesn't mean every family event has to be centered around that narrative. Life moves forward. Other people have stories, too. Other children have moments that matter. My stepdaughter's moment matters. It's easy to label someone as cold or selfish when they set boundaries, especially around emotional people or high-stakes occasions like weddings. But I've learned that standing your ground doesn't make you unkind. It makes you clear. And in this case, clarity was what everyone needed, even if they didn't want it. At the end of the day, I know I'll walk down the aisle proud, not just to marry the man I love, but to watch his daughter, wide-eyed and smiling, drop flower petals in front of me. She'll feel like a princess. She'll feel like she belongs. And that moment, her moment, will be one she remembers forever. As for my niece, she'll have plenty of her own moments to shine. But this one simply wasn't hers. And that's okay. Sometimes love means knowing when to say yes, and when to lovingly, respectfully, and firmly say no.